Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denisa Tova, and today I have a very special guest. I'm speaking with Amanda Rieben. She is a family law attorney, partner at law firm called Abrams Fensterman. And, she has a very unique and interesting legal journey. It is inspiring. Her roots are deeply entrenched in public interest work, advocating for parents in the child welfare system, supporting victims of domestic violence. I mean, and as the current president of the Westchester Women's Bar Association, she really is a beacon of support and championing causes close to her heart. So let's dive right into her story. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Denisa. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for your kind words.
It's a true pleasure. You have really an interesting story, and there are so many events. You've shared some with me that I know impacted, how you practice the law and who you are today. So, why don't you tell me about how being a competitive gymnast during your childhood, and also the fact that both your dad and grandfather were lawyers, and also there's more. Importantly, really is starting your career representing parents in the child welfare system and working with victims of domestic violence. There's just so much there. So, how has all of that impacted you?
So I think from a very early age, I learned to not take no for an answer, and also that there is never an easy path. When I started gymnastics, my coach told me that I was never going to get beyond level 4, which was not a very high level, and my parents didn't have that many expectations. And lo and behold, by the time I finished my gymnastics career, I had gotten to level 9. And I think what that shows you is that if you put your heart into anything and you give it your best, that you don't know what the limits are going to be. And that had stuck with me throughout my career and also my education. At the time that I stopped doing gymnastics, I was training 20 hours a week, so I had to really learn time management skills between my homework and socializing with friends and just balancing everything. And that stuck with me in law school. And so I went to New York Law School, which isn't one of the top law schools, but it was based in New York City, which was part of the reason that I chose that law school because of the opportunities. And what that experience helped me with was I had to work even harder to get that first legal internship. And so you may be familiar with the New York Public Interest Legal Fair, but unlike someone coming out of NYU or Columbia, I had to go to every table talk. I created an entire profile with my resume, writing sample, and everything else just to get a foot in the door and have a conversation with whoever was running that organization. Nothing was ever handed to me. And that's actually how I ultimately first got a legal internship at an agency in the city that worked exclusively with domestic violence victims.
What was that like?
So I didn't know what to expect. I knew when I went to law school that I wanted to help people. I had no idea what that path would look like, but I really enjoy having conversations with individuals and getting to know them on a personal level. So I felt that if I started off in public interest work, it would be a way to mirror my passion with the law with also working with individuals. And I learned a lot more than I could have ever expected. I didn't have a understanding of what domestic violence was. I thought of it as just forms of physical abuse when it means much more than that. And there are various dynamics of power control in place when someone is a victim. It could be anything from financial abuse to immigration using someone's status against them to emotional abuse or even using a child as a way to control someone after you've separated. And when I started that internship, I quickly began to see all the various ways in which domestic violence impacted my clients' lives. And I knew after that experience that family law was the field for me. And I didn't, exactly know what type of law that would like within family law that would mean, but I knew that I needed to be working with families and directly helping them with their issues because family is the most important thing.
How did you make a decision to even go to law school? From being you were in competitive gymnastics, I mean, that alone requires a load of discipline, and a really hard work and dedication. I mean, that's entirely different topic. I so admire that. But was it I think you did mention that your dad and your grandpa were both lawyers, right? Did they have any
Yes,
impact
yes,
on that decision?
so I when I was considering everything, I was a major of sociology, and I was contemplating a master's in social work, and I had several conversations with my dad about that versus going to law school, and ultimately, I determined that with a law degree, for me personally, and this doesn't mean that that's the right decision for everyone, that I could have a greater impact on someone's life because of the powers of the law and still work with someone just in a different setting. But
Mm.
as you may know, Denisa, because you work in this field as well, a lot of what we do is social work, even though we have a law degree. You know, a lot of times a client will call me and the things that they first want to discuss have nothing to do with legal advice concerning their case. They're really looking for a friend and someone to be compassionate and empathetic to their situation to help them get through what likely is one of the most difficult times in their life.
Hmm. You know
And I think, you know, my dad definitely was in full support of that decision. And you know, I saw with my own eyes that anything's possible through his hard work and his child and how he got to where he was. So
and then fast forward, what you mentioned about working with victims of domestic violence, and I mean, that is that takes a special, type of a person to be able to handle that, and how and I'm sure that there's a varied degree, of I don't even know how to phrase that, not level of domestic violence, there's just different types, but, that the intensity of that situation, I mean, that's not easy, right? We're all emotional human beings, and as much as we try to compartmentalize, excuse me, it's I, did you find that it was impacting you internally? And then what was that? Do you remember having that self dialogue with yourself? Is
yes.
how do I right? How do I sort of separate myself to be able to guide them?
So very early on in my career, as you had pointed out, I worked in the child welfare system. And I had a very hard time setting boundaries. And there were a number of young lawyers when I was at an agency called the Center for Family Representation who would move on to some other kind of work after a year or two because of the demands of the job. You know, like I would be in court with clients and they weren't choosing to hire me. I was being assigned by the county to represent this parent who was meeting me for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before we walked in front of a judge to discuss allegations that were being made against them that they didn't agree with. And I wasn't a parent at the time. So I was this young girl who they viewed as someone they couldn't relate to. And why should they trust me? And I think like ultimately, you know, I did have a hard time, but what overrode my own personal emotions was seeing the sense of gratitude from each of my clients when, for example, I would win something called a 1028 hearing and that client's child was reunited and placed back in their care. I think nothing, you know, can replace that sort of feeling and the knowing that you are directly making a positive impact on someone's life. And as you know, as you continue to practice, you get a better handle on the law. So that part gets easier. And you learn different ways to compartmentalize and deal with your clients' issues so they don't infiltrate every aspect of your life. You know, I'm certainly guilty now where I do check my email at all hours of the day because unfortunately in matrimonial law, what my clients are going through, it doesn't happen only between 9 and 5. And there are emergencies and but I do know how to set personal limits and I hang on to those cases and those clients who are truly appreciative of your hard work and also just seeing how much of an impact you can have for them and not just them but for their children because many of my clients do have children and I'm a mother of 3 and I understand. I mean, my kids are the most important thing to me.
Talking about setting limits and balance, talk to me about the challenge of maintaining a presence in your children's lives while having such a demanding career. I mean, is there a moment or a decision that sort of tested, that balance between personal life and professional responsibility, and how did you navigate through it?
I think for me personally, it's ebbed and flowed. One of the hardest transitions I had being a professional was after my second was born. My older two are less than 2 years apart, and being sleep deprived, having two kids in diapers, figuring out feeding schedules, and working 50 plus 60 hours a week is no joke. It goes back to my earlier years and making use of every moment. And certainly there are times where I ask myself whether it's worth it, or there's times where I've made transitions in my work to allow for more time. Um, like for a while, I was at the Pace Women's Justice Center, which was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, and I got to help them start up a legal clinic for domestic violence victims, which was one of the first of its kind in Westchester County. And we would see clients on one-off basis to provide them with limited scope representation. But what was different about this clinic from the other services that PACE offered was that it did not require a client to actually seek court intervention. They were coming to
Mm.
me first and to other lawyers in the clinic for legal advice and guidance without that same sort of concerns like, do I have to file for an order of protection? Or do I have to file for divorce? Or do I have to file a violation for child support? It was truly a place to get information and to be informed, and information is power, right? And so being at a nonprofit for a while gave me a little bit more flexibility with the amount of hours per day that I was spending working. And the pandemic also helped with that because my youngest was born a few months before COVID, and I don't want to, the COVID was not a blessing, but it was a blessing for me personally in the sense that I got to work from home for a few years when my kids were little. And now, I feel extremely fortunate to work at a firm that understands that we all have families and that work can be done from the office, but it can also be done effectively from home. And my direct boss, Jill Spielberg, who's the head of our department, truly gets it. She is a working mom herself, and she makes it a priority that her staff can be there for their children. Like yesterday, for example, I was nervous if I was even going to make this podcast because my youngest had the stomach bug, but not just any
Mm.
stomach bug. She had been throwing up um, over 10 times in less than 24 hours. And I was in the ER last night with her getting fluids. And so I say this because, I feel that I'm working somewhere right now where I'm appreciated as an individual, as a mother, and also as an advocate for my clients. And it's the best of I guess both worlds. And I also pride myself in trying to set the best example for my children so that when they get older, they can feel like anything is possible.
I love that, and I really appreciate your authenticity, just kind of like walking us through, the challenges, and also I love to hear how you define your own balance. And I'm hearing more and more that it's not so much about blurring the lines of work and a personal life. It's simply sort of it's a lot, the virtual world, and I think also the understanding um, in the entrepreneurial world, and partners who run firms in order to be successful is really creating environment where you don't have to choose, because you spend so
Right.
many hours working, and it's a big chunk of your life. And so if you want to have, happy team that's fulfilled, that is key. I know you're deeply involved in a community. Obviously, you have been for such a long time. But I'm curious, you're also the president of the Westchester Women's Bar Association, and that involves, rallying people to a common goal, sometimes herding cats. How do you look at your role? Like, what are your strengths you think that you're bringing to the table? And then what are some things that you feel you had to grow through or still growing through in that role?
I definitely still feel like I'm growing through many things, day to day. When I first started practicing, I wasn't even comfortable speaking in court, let alone standing up at an annual dinner in front of 200 people giving a speech for 5 minutes, and having the confidence to do that, and the confidence to hopefully have the respect of those that are in attendance. But for me, like in accepting the position or nomination as president of the Western Women's Bar Association, I wanted to take on that role to also continue to have an impact on society and in the legal community. And I viewed it as a way to help inform Westchester, and more than just Westchester, the Ninth Judicial District, on various social issues that are important to me. And as you had referenced earlier today, I started off my career in public interest work, so this was another platform to promote that type of work. And at the beginning of my term, I had made a commitment to inform the Ninth Judicial District on domestic violence issues. And I helped to create a 3-part training series in collaboration with many of our domestic violence providers in the community, including the Pace Women's Justice Center, My Sister's Place, and Hope Store. And we did a training series where many of the family court and Supreme Court judges came, and they came to all 3 parts. And it was amazing. It was a way to have a conversation with the judges on the bench and to discuss what the law allows them to do from the bench, and also with having individuals from each of these agencies talk on what domestic violence is, give the judges a sense of who each litigant is, not just who sets foot in the courtroom, but what
Mm.
got them to even enter the courtroom. What was their life experience before that? What does it mean for them for the 5 or 10 minutes that they're in front of a judge? What is it like for them that their abuser is in the court with them? And to really provide a more holistic, like, I guess, understanding of everything it may have taken that victim to even just get to that point. And we're not even just getting to the outcome of the litigation process, but even just seeking the court's intervention. And I think it was effective. And I hope before my term ends to do more of those types of trainings. And I've also have had various nonprofits speak at the beginning of some of our board meetings about the services that they offer. And I hope to continue to do that at least for another one of our board meetings before the end of the year, as well as have some additional family court programs. Like, we have a program coming up that we're going to host in collaboration with Legal Service of the Hudson Valley on emergency proceedings with the 1028s that I was discussing before, that involve the immediate return of a child who's been removed from their parents' care. So I guess
You
to
really,
answer your
yeah.
question, sorry, even if you're nervous, I try to view like the end goal as the way to have a sense of like empowerment when you navigate the complexities of it.
Hmm. Sounds like you just press through. I love what you're saying is I think that's what's holding many people back, that fear. It's not that people who appear to be confident on the stage or are leaders, they don't sweat it, they don't get anxious, but they press through the uncomfortable because they believe in a greater cause, the greater good that it will bring. And it's almost like I can relate because you're almost like you throwing yourself into the unknown. At least for me, it's like I only know that I grow if I throw myself into something unknown. So you're like constantly stretching yourself, it seems like. Um, all right, so here's actually like completely unrelated, little rapid fire round. So what makes you laugh out loud? Totally cracks you up.
My children, especially my youngest, she is a spitfire. Like, she just will say whatever she wants, and she doesn't care about like who she's impacting with it. And I wish more people in this world were like that, where they just didn't have a filter and said what was truly on their mind.
Yeah, and all of us then not overreacting to it, right? Like appreciating someone's being authentic and say what they want to say. Yeah, that is so funny and it's so true. Um, I mean, I know you are so stretched for time, but are there any shows that you guys binge on when you want to just sort of transport yourself, completely out of away from work and busyness?
This year has been a little bit harder than usual to find any time to watch TV. I'm not gonna lie. Um, I I've just started watching, I think it's called like a sex education or whatever it is on Netflix, about the high schooler who starts his own business as a sex therapist like his mom, and it's pretty amusing.
I did see that
So,
one. That sounds
no,
funny,
it's
actually.
a good one. That's very good, yeah.
Hey, what's your least favorite house chore?
Doing dishes. I love cooking, I don't like doing the dishes.
Oh, you love cooking? What do you like to
Do.
cook?
Anything. I like baking with my daughters. I love all sorts of seafood, so I do a lot of recipes of that sort. My oldest loves chicken parmesan, so I make that a lot for her,
Mm.
or pasta with meat sauce. So the things that make my kids happy, and then new recipes with my husband.
Oh, that's great. Does he help with the cooking?
He's a better cook than I am. I would say, like, the difference between us is he will pick an intricate recipe on a Saturday that takes 4 or 5 hours, and I tend to do, like, the everyday cooking that's, like, a half-hour meal. I don't have quite the patience that he does to do the elaborate, like, onion soup or meatballs with homemade tomato sauce that's, like, a very long process, but the whole house smells wonderful, and it's relaxing, and it's nice. It's a
Mm.
good way to balance each other out.
Wow, yeah, it sounds like art. Sounds like a nice relaxing time. Yeah. Um, so finally, what would be your advice to incoming attorneys and maybe something that you wish someone gave you or you had to learn yourself?
Um, your career is a journey, and where you start doesn't mean that's where you're gonna end up, and you don't have to have it all figured out or know exactly what you wanna do when you first start. And also, like, really seek out great mentors. I think that that just makes such a positive impact on one's profession, and I referenced earlier, Jill Spielberg, who I work with now, and I also wanna just mention Georgia Kramer, who has been a matrimony lawyer for over 40 years. And I just have to say, like, being at Abrams Fensterman right now, where I have these other female lawyers who are so incredibly knowledgeable in the field and who also are invested in my career and my future, like, really makes a difference. And I hope that every lawyer can find that, because that's not always a given in every work environment. And to not be afraid to make transitions if you're not happy in a current place, or maybe something works because of other things you have going on in your life for a period of time, and that's okay, because you're going to pick up skills and learn something at every step of the way. And I know that I can confidently say, with every legal position that I've been in, I'm utilizing those skill sets and knowledge in some way now in my current role as partner at Abrams Fensterman.
Nothing has been lost. None of your experience that you've had, you're utilizing now. So you're right, you never know. Just expose yourself to different things and try different things. And because you as we said, there's so many layers, there's so many areas that you have to that you tap into when you're dealing with your clients. So the more you soak up, the more you learn and pick up, the more effective you will be and more confident you will feel. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It's been so inspiring in the sense that your resilience, your thirst for growth, and your passion, and just being so community minded and so determined. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
You're too kind, Denisa, and it's a privilege to be on this show and to be talking to you about my experiences. And I guess I would just leave the audience with one other food for thought, is just that I hope that everyone can find something that they love that they do. I truly enjoy helping people in my capacity now in this role. And while I might be in private practice and not at a nonprofit anymore, many of my clients really are in need, and they need a lawyer who is there to help understand and help navigate through their difficult times. And it gives me gratification, so I hope whatever someone else is looking for gives them that sense of gratification that they need to succeed.
That is probably the best advice. Love what you do. Makes a difference in the world. And
Yeah.
to our viewers and listeners, to learn more about Amanda Rieben and her remarkable work and how to get a hold of her, make sure that you check out her bio link below. And of course, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast. Follow us on all social media channels. Until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.